Hey there, hunters, and welcome back to the Gunners Guild. Today in Remnant, we're going to be talking about the Archon Summoner archetype combo for mod builds that are now pretty much exclusively going to be revolving around explosive based mods. We do have a surprisingly large amount of mods to choose from in this category, but I found that only a few really stand out as being good. So we're going to talk about the archetype combo and pretty much everything else related here and kind of show you why what's good and what's not. So let's just dive in. We're going to start with talking about the pairing of Archon and Summoner and why it's pretty much the only combination to use now if you're going to be using explosives. Unsurprisingly, the 35% extra explosive damage given to Summoner kind of forced our hands into this route. While none of the other perks or skills do anything for us, we really just can't ignore the combined 70% damage from Summoner alone. Even the summons themselves are largely useless as we're going to be running explosives and we end up just killing our minions most of the time because explosives seem to bypass kinship and just shred summons anyways. That and the minions also are just going to be getting in the way of our shots, and if you're playing with explosives, that's just pretty bad. Now even the flyers are troublesome now, like they just seem to get in close and personal to the bosses, which is odd, and they just eat rockets and AoE damage, so skills, yeah, no bueno. Of course though, we're still going to be running Archon as the primary because it's straight mandatory for pretty much any mod build, because 100% mod generation after using a mod, really can't pass that up as we really don't have that many ways to generate mod power without sacrificing pretty much all of our ring slots at that point. We really do need ways to generate more mod power now that Stone of Malevolence and Faerun's ring kind of got nerfed, well, fixed. Because right now without Archon, you're not using a mod build, at least nowhere near as effective as you should be. Now, while you could obviously use something like Ritualist or Challenger for explosive builds, because there's really nothing locking you down to Archon and Summoner, especially because Ritualist will also provide you with, Death Wish, but I just don't see why you would use that. I don't see that there's much of any gain from going other archetypes that's going to outweigh these two. Maybe you can finagle some kind of like explosive dot build with Archon Ritualist, but again, you're going to be sacrificing a lot of damage. So we're going to be sticking with Archon Summoner. Moving on to your choice of mods. We had a lot of mods with the explosive tag. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Here's kind of a list, and I kind of made this just to show the damage and damage over time versus how much mod power they cost. You can feel free to look at that at your leisure. But I want to talk about just a few of the ones that I use and just seem to perform the best for me. So we're going to be covering two different mod power builds that focus on explosive mods. Because now that we got extra scaling for explosive mods, they're that much better than other direct damage mods, and I mean they were already better before, so now they're just like doubly better. So the first build is another one that I had previously covered, which is going to be a mod swapper build. Now back then I had been using Stone of Malevolence to prop up the mod generation because you can get some serious mod power off dots. Now that the stone has been fixed, getting mod power is a bit harder, so we do need to find different avenues to sustain the mod spam. Luckily, we can still run the mod swapper setup in the current patch of Remnant 2 with a few minor tweaks. Now before, we had been running the Archon Challenger setup because of the extra crit from Challenger, and stagger resistance when you need it was actually kind of handy. But it turns out when I had made that video originally, Challenger wasn't even working with those mods. But now that we have to run Archon and Summoner for the extra damage, it's actually a lot stronger than it was before. And we do pick Archon because we're kind of required for the mod generation, but now that Chaos Gate is also a lot stronger, it's definitely worthwhile to use whenever you get the chance now. Summoner is just strictly there for the 70% damage bonus for our explosives. Minions are worthless as we mentioned, we just blow them up. But hey, damage is damage. For the actual weapons and mods, I'm running the shotgun, but that's up to you, you can use whatever long gun you want, with the Helix mod attached, and Corrupted Meridian of course. This is the same setup I had before, but now we're going to be having Prophecy on the shotgun with Helix, because as of now, it does reduce the mod power costs of both equipped weapons, which is technically a bug, but it actually may stay that way. Either way, it's still one of the only good mod mutators. If it does get fixed, Harmonizer is going to be the next one to use. On the Corrupted Meridian, we have Feedback, because Feedback will generate 10% of the damage of Dead Point as mod power, and Dead Point deals a lot of damage. I think its base damage is like 150 times 8 hits. Way more than Helix, so we will get a lot more mod power back from Dead Point than running Helix. I think you can swap the mutators and the loop will still work, but this is kind of how my setup is. The first line of Feedback doesn't really do anything. I mean, it's 20% of like 500 mod power over like 10 seconds. That's like 10 mod power a second. That's not really that much, so we don't have to worry about that. The second line, that's the good part. Now for the trinkets, we do have two options for this setup. The stronger option is to run the standard crit setup with Abrasive Whetstone, Atonement Fold, Burden of the Gambler, Probability Cord, and then Burden of the Follower for the extra mod generation. Crit is crit, it's always going to be the best. If you can run it, run it. And it's just great here because we're directly scaling our mod generation through our damage now with the feedback mutator. So more damage with crits and crit damage means more mod power, so we can spam more. So it just kind of plays hand in hand. I don't make up the rules, crit's always going to be the best. You can of course still run the detonation trigger setup for the extra dots, which still do generate a decent amount of mod power, and in that case you can also use the Singe Ring for 10% multiplicative damage since the targets are always going to be ignited, except for the bosses that can't, and there are kind of a few bosses that you can't really run ignites on, like Talrot the Metaphysical, Keula's Shadow, and Abomination are all on water and just clear the fire dot. And then for some reason, Shahalo is also immune to the burning status, so that's just weird. Just be aware of those bosses. Also, Akari Warband can be used in this setup too in place of Burden of the Follower for extra damage, which again is still going to be extra mod damage, so it's not going to be that big of an impact if we're losing Burden of the Follower. You can still sustain the loop if you're running the Akari Warband. I think I do use it in a couple of these clips, like on One True King. For your Relic Fragments, you're going to be wanting to run the reduced mod cost and increased mod damage, duh. And you actually want weapon swap speed here. Yeah, you really want that. It does help your DPS tremendously. Reprocessed Heart is actually going to be your best relic, as the mod power generated through that will continue to fuel active mods now, which is pretty huge. I still run Tranquility Heart most of the time just because I'm lazy and I end up just not using my relics, but you're going to want Reprocessed Heart. Armor, up to you, dealer's choice. For traits, we're going to want to make sure we grab Affliction for both the bleed duration of the grenades if you're going to be running the crit setup, or even the fire dots from detonation trigger. Kinship is also highly advised because you can still easily kill yourself with any of these explosives. It's not going to save your minions at all, but it will save you. And Spirit because duh. But pretty much everything else, up to you. I run Siphoner and Rugged as my extra traits. You're free to run like Bark, Skin, and Fortify if you want to do a more tanky setup. Do whatever makes you comfortable. So that's going to be all the gear for the mod swapper style. And of course, as you can imagine, or if you haven't seen the original build video, the playstyle is not for everybody. You need to be fast and cycle the shoot, swap weapon, and activate mod buttons really fast. You just got to cycle those 3 actions over and over again. Once you get into a rhythm of it, it's actually kind of cool and pretty fun, except when you drop it, that feels awful. But this setup still does huge amounts of damage, as you can see from the boss kills. It's about 5k DPS now when you get the rotation down pretty solidly, but even then if you're going slow, it's still like 4k DPS with no weak spots required, just point and shoot. It's actually really high DPS for a mod build. The zone clear is pretty solid as well, because Helix rockets will track adds and chase them down extremely far away, and you can clear most places with just the Helix rockets. And of course you still have Dead Point from Corrupted Meridian, which will clear most elites in just one shot. It can be a little iffy on the mod generation if you missed your shots, but that's what Reprocessed Heart and some Fairy Needles are for, right? Overall, this is one of my absolute favorite builds to use in Remnant 2, and I'm glad it only got better, even after the fixes to Stone Malevolence. It's a lot stronger than it was before, so, dude, mod swapper, explosives, S tier build for sure. And see, this is kind of why I like to avoid all the bugged and broken stuff when I make my build videos, because eventually that shit's gonna get patched. And rather cry on Reddit or the Discord that, my broken shit isn't broken anymore, I can be happy knowing that my builds are pretty much better than ever, so woohoo for me, I guess. Anyway, moving on to the next build, I'm gonna try to make this quick. Starfield was one of my other mod builds that I really liked, but that one kind of got trashed with the Stone of Malevolence changes. Sustaining Starshot is actually a lot harder to do, it turns out. That being said, you can still run a Starshot build, but now as an explosives focused build. We're still going to be running Archon Summoner, and this is going to be our go-to combo for pretty much any mod build it seems like. But for the weapons, I'm still going to be using Shotgun and Helix, but I'm putting the Feedback Mutator now on Helix. And then of course Starshot, which we're going to be building around, is going to be running Prophecy as the mutator. Reason for this being is that Feedback on Starshot is only going to generate you about 2 charges of the mod on use. And then swapping to Helix rockets is only going to get you a little bit more mod power per shot for Starshot. I mean, you should be able to top it off, but it's basically not going to generate any mod power for the Helix itself. But swapping these lets Helix generate mod power for itself and Starshot, because you always want to lead with Starshot. And then you can get about 3 or 4 Helix rockets in, because again, their damage is going to be fueling in their regeneration. And you can get about 3 or 4 Helix rockets in back to back before you run out of mod power, because remember, the damage from Helix rockets are also going to be feeding back into them as mod power now, which is going to get you a lot more mod power to put back into Starshot because you get more Helixes. Plus, Starshot's Big Bang will still fully generate the 2 mod charges for Helix instantly, so you don't have to worry about that. You can go right in from Starshot into Helix and then back and forth, and this is how you can sustain the loop that way. So this is still kind of like a mod swapper loop build, but it's not as fast or demanding. So you're going to be shooting Big Bang, swap to Helix, fire 2 to 3 rockets, swap back to Starshot, shoot your Big Bang, rinse and repeat. So it's not just, mod swap shoot. It's more like shoot your mod, swap, shoot your mod a bunch more times, swap, rinse and repeat from there. And the trinkets for this build are actually different. Crazy, right? The amulet we're going to be using is going to be the detonation trigger, because we actually do need the extra dots to generate some more mod power for us. 100% we need that. And then we're going to be running the Singerine because it's a free 10% multiplicative damage modifier, and everything we do is going to cause burning, so it's basically always on. Burn of the Follower for the extra mod generation, and the last 2 rings are going to be the White Pawn Stamp and Burn of the Warlock for 25% reduced mod cost, which is really big for Starshot. And with all of our mod reductions in place, this is going to reduce the Big Bang mod cost down to 2600 mod power instead of like 3600, which is what it usually is. And then this is also going to bring Helix down to 340 mod power. So, I mean, these things aren't costing anywhere near as much. The relic fragments we're going to be having for this build are the standard, increased mod power and reduced mod cost. And your third fragment is up to you. I put on elemental damage to help with the Big Bang dot, but that's pretty freakishly minor, so feel free to go with whatever you want. Armor, you do you, boo. For the traits, you're definitely going to want Kinship to protect yourself from Big Bang, and Siphoner to leech back the life lost from Burden of the Warlock. I'm using Potency for the double item duration so I can throw on a Fairy Needle at the start of a boss fight, so that's a good little bonus there. You can also use Affliction to have slightly longer Starshot dots, but that's about it. And then obviously Spirit is a must-have, but those are the only mandatory traits you need. Feel free to shift everything else around to whatever you'd like. Now, this version of the Starshot or Starfield build is definitely not as strong as it once was. It does not fire as many Starshots as it did before, nor does it do as much damage, because we did have to trade a fair amount of our trinkets to support the mod generation to keep the playstyle up. That being said, it's still very fun to use, and it does pretty respectable damage to bosses. I can't really test the DPS at the training area because it kind of takes you out of the boxes all the time, but the boss kill times aren't terrible. And with Kinship Bomb, you're not even going to have to worry about killing yourself with Big Bang damage. You can just point blank shoot it, or you can even use the pushback from Big Bang as like a pseudo evade to push yourself out of the way. I do it all the time. So self-deletion's not going to be a thing like at all. Now, the zone clear speed is not the best, even though we do have Helix rockets. Just because we can't really use Starshot except for saving it for like elites or something, so we mostly have to just use the shotgun and Helix, and that's basically the only thing we have to clear zones. And it works for sure, but if you miss a rocket, you're going to be kind of boned on the mod generation, so just try not to miss. And look, it's not bad at clearing all the areas, it's just not quite as good as other things, like Nebula and World's Edge. So this is going to be my Starshot build for now, going forward until we get some more tools. I still love the setup, I do love Big Bang, Starshot's like one of my favorite weapons. It did get hit pretty hard, but it's still pretty usable. So I am still glad that it functions after the Stone of Malevolence got gutted, or fixed actually. Now, that being said, I do want to talk about a few honorary mentions for some explosive builds that didn't quite make the cut for me. The first one is Corrupted Arbalest. Look, I love Arbalest and the Corrupted Arbalest, they feel great now. Their clear speed damage is pretty solid for all the zone stuff, can't really complain about that. But they do rely way too much on bounces because their single target DPS is not good. Like, Corrupted Arbalest is passable, it gets the job done, but I don't think Corrupted Arbalest is doing anything better than any other explosive mod around. Had they made it be able to like bounce off the boss, hit a wall, and then come back to the boss, or just hit the same target twice, that would be, twice as good as it is now. Yeah, twice. And then it would be pretty decent as a boss weapon. But right now, I just don't think it has the oomph for me. And the same goes for regular Arbalest, it just doesn't deal like enough boss damage for me. The second explosive build is the Anguish builds, and look, I know Anguish is super strong right now, it's crazy. but that is a fleeting thing because it's currently double dipping on all the explosive bonuses that, or they're becoming multiplicative bonuses. I can't really see which way it is, but they're getting way too much damage out of explosive additions. So the summoner, the detonation trigger, and blasting cap ring are all scaling the damage way too high. So once that gets fixed on Anguish, I feel like Anguish is going to be gutted and probably won't be worth building around in the same way because it requires all your time to use it. And if you're doing all that work, holding down the trigger the entire time, you can't swap or whatever, and you're getting about, 3k DPS, I don't really see it, being worth it. So I'm going to be avoiding it for now. I'll revisit later after I get some fixes and such, but, I know it's strong right now, but going to have to put it on the back burner. But anyway, that's going to be all for me for now. These are my 2 explosive mod builds. I do have a bunch of more build ideas and guides that I'm working on, so bear with me as I get those edited and such. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know, or feel free to join my Discord in the description below. But yeah, thanks for watching. Peace, good luck out there, hunters. Thanks everyone, Patreon members, Discord, for hanging around. I appreciate it. Peace, see ya, bye, yeah.